Before I got into it, advancement and development, and that whole world was a black hole. I thought development meant you're developing something, and you are, but it's not intuitive that development means fundraising.
Welcome to Insider Career Conversations. This podcast highlights non-traditional paths to careers and professions. My name is Sylvia Juarez, and I am your host. I'm an education consultant and higher ed advocate. Insider Career Conversations explores professions with their education background needed and its unique contribution to society. This season's conversations touch on advancement and development roles and how they are an important part of our community engagement. My co-host, Molly, and I have worked together, not only exploring our own interests and curiosities, but we support others as they do the same. In communities across the nation, organizations exist to support causes that are important. Some are well known, and others exist through grassroots efforts, including partnerships and community engagements. Organizations need individuals to advance different causes with creative skill sets and develop innovative ideas. Advancement and development includes opportunities to work with budgets, program management, and execution strategies. It may also focus on fundraising as a primary goal for a nonprofit or foundation. This can be a way to help a cause and even grow your professional career. All of these paths lead to exciting careers that might impact your community specifically. Individuals seeking careers in advancement and development may focus on fundraising as their primary role for a nonprofit organization. Additionally, specialties may include careers in individual and annual giving, grant writing, prospect research, volunteer management, and support roles to these positions. This career field has definitely made a difference in people's lives. Our hosts will discuss their journey and additional components to their field. Discussions will approach ways you can consider the career path and develop your skill set to be successful. Hey, Molly, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thanks, Sylvia. It's so great to be back with you again.
Yes, Molly, and here we are talking about all these things that we think are so super interesting and can potentially help somebody out there with their professional career. I know some of the things you and I have talked about in the past have been skill sets and traits and how to apply them to our careers, because you and I have had quite a few roles that I think we have shown how our independence has helped us in working our different positions. What do you think about that?
You know, I'm glad you bring that up because I'm just coming off the heels of a very big event that I hosted last weekend for my organization, Girls on the Run. And it just really brings to mind that the work that we do every day usually culminates in some kind of event, whether that's a fundraising event or an activity. And it's really what the work is all about. And so for me personally, in my role now, to see these little girls running and being so excited and being joyful, it just makes me realize these last several weeks leading up to this event, when I felt like maybe I was pulling my hair out a little bit with all of the logistics, it really puts it into perspective. And so I'm just so happy to be doing this work. And I know a lot of your listeners can maybe think about that as they are thinking about careers. What's the end goal? What do you like to work on? And then realizing there's a lot of steps to get there before you actually get to that end role.
I know, and I think you and I are problem solvers. And today I'm excited to talk to our guest because it sounds like she's one of us. She understands that there's a goal to get to and there's a process to it. And some of us are called overthinkers, we're too picky, we're perfectionists, but I think you and I have established that's a skill set. Mm-hmm. Can you introduce us?
Yes, so it is my absolute delight and pleasure to introduce Chandra Ramirez, who I met, Chandra, I believe 3 years ago. And it's hard to think about because I think we meet people in our work and we think, oh, I've always known them because there's a professional and a personal level to the work that we do. But Chandra and I clicked from the very beginning. We were working at an institution of higher education, and it was a strange time because we started working, COVID happened, we hadn't met, we were on opposite campuses in opposite ends of our state. And so we really kind of had to come together through the work remotely and all of those things. And gosh, we probably didn't meet in person until maybe 3 or 4 months into our professional work. And since I moved on from the organization and then Chandra also moved on, we have definitely remained close and have helped each other move on in our careers. Chandra, please introduce yourself to us.
Hello. Thank you so much, Sylvia and Molly, for having me today. I'm really excited to be here talking to you about advancement and development and that whole world, which before I got into it was a black hole. I thought development meant you're developing something, and you are, but it's not how you would think. It's not intuitive that development means fundraising, basically. So yes, I met Molly a few years ago at our former institution where we both worked, and it was like a meeting of like minds through Zoom, because it was a while before we could meet in person because of the COVID pandemic. But I was thrown into helping Molly in the advancement department, and I had no experience with it. And she really was my first introduction to this world and all the great things that can come out of fundraising for great causes at universities.
Thank you so much, ladies, for that summary, because I think you're touching on two important things that our current audience are probably having to deal with. One is the shift of in-person versus virtual. And I know a lot of us may be doing some hybrid work and all of that, which to me is very counterintuitive when it comes to development. And we'll define development and advancement, but I'd like to touch on that when it comes to you ladies met virtually. And what I would like to know is that shift of this field within the virtual space and the in-person space, because I know now Molly's doing a lot of in-person and engaged, with individuals and groups of people to really move her cause, and how that's kind of impacted the professional aspect of it. And then you touched on something, Chandra, that I think is important that we do touch on. And one of the reasons why I specifically wanted a season of this was some of us were put into development because they needed a body to go into the advancement. And while I appreciate the fact that, we are people that think on our feet, we've established that, we're like-minded. Can you speak to that, Chandra, to that moment where you were like, okay, I'm giving this responsibility, whatever the responsibility was. How did your mindset move from, okay, this is what I think it is, this is what I'm going to use of my talents, and then if you can, maybe a product or something that you were able to manifest or to see based on what task you were given?
So when Molly and I worked together at the University of Redlands, it was a very odd time, like she was talking about, because the institution that is up here in Northern California is a former theological school that was merging with the University of Redlands. So I was on this campus and she was down at the Southern campus, and Molly was working at both campuses and needed some assistance with being eyes and ears on the Northern California campus. And I had a little bit of extra time, so I was assigned to Molly, basically, which turned out to be wonderful. But it was all new to me. And at the same time, since I've worked in administration for a while, many of the tasks are the same tasks across just about all fields, right? You need to answer emails, and you need to answer the phone, and you need to talk to people, and you need to talk to vendors, and you need to plan events. It's all kind of the administrative tasks that I was used to. I come from a background in school counseling. I have my master's degree in educational psychology. And when I was working as a school counselor in an elementary school, I realized that my favorite part was making sure my files were all in order and all the administrative tasks. I like those better than working with kids, which I loved, but I also found really difficult because I would take some of the issues that I was coming across home with me, having children of my own. There was some transference, and that part wasn't my favorite because of that. What I really liked was my nice, neat files. And
I had a boss, Chandra, that used to tell me before I started my career in education, I had a boss that in corporate that would tell me when she came into my desk, if you got piles, you got problems. So I don't want to see any piles on your desk because I don't want to see any problems. So I feel you. I was groomed into anything that's higher than 2 pages is an issue on my desk.
Yes. As I'm looking at a pile of papers next to
me.
Okay. Yes. Yeah, I do like to be organized, but basically the tasks can often be the same, but with advancement, you have a goal. You need to raise money. You have a concrete goal that you're going for. And And so one of the things I did for Molly was the goal isn't just fundraising, it's making connections, it's creating community, it's making people feel like, especially at the university, that they still belong to an institution that they might not have been at in many years. So for Molly, I did an alumni newsletter, which was actually really fun. And it was a monthly newsletter, and I got to gather tidbits and about what's going on and events that are coming up and opportunities for our alumni that would come along. So I loved that. I really loved that piece of connecting with the community and hearing feedback that people appreciated the newsletter and that people actually read it was nice. So that was one of the products of my work with her, was helping with that creation of community, while the goal, of course, was raising money for the university. But within that goal is connecting people and connecting them back to their institution.
Yeah, and I'm glad you bring that up, Chandra, because I think it's been about a year or more that both of us have been away from those specific roles. But as you were talking, I was actually remembering the struggle that I was feeling in the role of director of development. So here I was supposed to direct a program that didn't really exist. We were kind of resurrecting something. But to have you physically there, boots on the ground, to be able to say, hey, guess what? There's going to be this event on campus. And I think if we could get it recorded and then put a link in the newsletter, that would resonate with alumni. That's what I needed in a support person, was to kind of feed me the information that would help me then reach out or build relationships later that then I could say, well, gosh, we have these concerts on campus and those connections. You mentioned connections. And I think in the world of advancement, and specifically development, fundraising, alumni events, those are critical. And it does take everybody in each role. And on this podcast, we've spoken, Sylvia and I, with people in research and events. And honestly, none of that will come together if we don't have a support person that's touching all of the areas. So the newsletter needs content, but it also needs data. And so there's that role of cleaning up the data. Somebody updates their information. It has to get into the database, all of those things. So I really feel like the support role in advancement and in any organization is the key role to kind of making everything work. Sylvia, what do you think about that?
Well, I like what you're saying, because I think it's also for our listeners to understand that both of you, if I'm understanding correctly, have moved on to other ventures independently, not together. And I think one of the things that I'm learning from this particular generation is that they're not lifers like my generation, where you found a spot, you stayed there for 20, 25 years, and then you retired. That was essentially what the goal was. You finish college, you stay somewhere. Through different experiences Molly and I have shared in different times of our lives, things have pivoted in terms of our jobs, in terms of, I know I worked for an institution that's budget was shifted, so I had to move on to another role. I became an entrepreneur, so things kind of happened to me. But I think one of the things I really appreciate about this particular generation is that they're so quick to pivot and take their skill set and apply them elsewhere. Either one of you ladies, can you talk about how what your critical thinking or that independence, that work that you do independently, really kind of drives a little bit about, regardless of where you're doing advancement and development, does it matter short of the mission, right? You have to understand, or you have to be in tune with the mission. Does it matter who you're working with the skill set that you have in this particular place?
Well, that's a great question. I hope Chandra jumps on it, because I want to think some more. You're a deep thinker today, Sylvia.
Yeah, well, I told you ladies I had a spirited weekend.
Good. Yeah, I think as we're thinking about young people maybe going into their first career, or even picking a major or a career path through some extra education, what is it that's going to carry you through multiple roles? Because my role today is very different than it was when I worked with Chandra. But I think the skills, so as Chandra was saying too, you like the organization. I actually like the cyclical nature of development or advancement, because you start with a goal in mind, you start whatever that cycle is, There are specific things that happen. For me now, it's starting a season, a 10-week season where I have to recruit and train volunteers. And then I work with schools to make sure that we have a place for these girls to conduct their practices with the coaches. And then it culminates in a large 5K event, which we just had this past weekend. And gosh, that's where you stand there and you go, oh my gosh, this is what it's all about. But all of those same skills, checking emails, making sure you have good communication with the people who need to know. There might be vendors you're contacting about supporting an event. And Chandra, I'd like you to speak about that because I know in your role now, you're doing a lot of that work also. But I think those are the things that I think about, the skills that I try to bring to each job or that organization, keeping things moving forward, even in those difficult times, because you know the end result is what it's all about.
And I think we think of, you just described an event, right? Like you particular run you just did, right? So that's, we see that, but you're pointing out something very important. And I think we talked about it a little bit with the event planning colleague we had was, that's the big hurrah. Like that's the big sigh of relief, and everybody's going towards the parking lot and the event has gone on without a hitch, maybe a couple of hiccups here and there, but successful. I think, Chandra, in your role, how do you think you carry a mission forward for a particular organization? Would you mind telling us a little bit about what you currently do and how you see yourself engaging in that mission?
Yeah, so I work for the University of Southern California. My official title is office manager, which encompasses many things besides just managing the physical space. We're regional. So since USC is in LA, we are the San Francisco regional office, and our territory is everything north of Fresno, basically up to the California border. Okay. And we are responsible for managing relationships with our donors and alumni. Well, we also have an alumni relations department that handles that, but we still keep in contact with alumni up here in Northern California. And we put on several events each year. And Molly was talking about the cyclical nature of what she's doing, creating an event, and I'm doing all the work that has to go into that and then putting the event on. Universities are very cyclical as well. The school year, we have slow summers and then we hit the ground running in the fall. And for USC, of course, that means football season. So there's the football season that has to be managed and everybody wants to go to the tailgates and the games. And then we have the actual meat of the semester. And then we go on break, which is a great perk of working for a university. You often get 2 weeks off at Christmas. And then you go in again to spring semester, which culminates with commencement, which is so wonderful because much of our fundraising is for scholarships. So you get to see students graduate who might not have gotten there without the support that our donors or alumni and parents give to the university in the form of scholarships. And then it's summer again, which is slow and nice. But yeah, I recently had an event that I did soup to nuts, and we brought in faculty from our health sciences campus and we invited parents. And it was at the Peninsula Golf and Country Club, which is a beautiful country club down the peninsula. Yeah. And it was free, of course, for parents of current students. And the speakers spoke on mental health. And the university is developing a new mental health app that will really help students connect to mental health services and be able to flag any real issues early so they can get the help they need. And so the doctors spoke to the parents about this, and it was a wonderful thing to do for the community, but we're also presenting opportunities for the parents to donate money to make this happen because there are so many competing needs, of course, as you can imagine at a university, even one with a lot of money. There's always needs for more research and more development. So,
You're touching on a lot of points that speak to me. I mainly work in communities that are first generation, low income. So scholarships to USC, God bless you, keep going because, here in Southern California, aside from UCLA and other schools that may stand out, I think USC arguably is one of the ones that every time I talk to a student or work with a student, it's like, I have my dream school is USC. And it's fantastic to have somebody that's directly working with that specific idea of a student being able to make that dream a possibility. Because parents, once they see that price tag, they're like, well, it would have been nice if you could have gone there. But when individuals like yourself, Chandra, are working actively in creative ways, because as an alum of a public institution that's name brand, sometimes I get a little jaded. I think Molly and I have talked about a couple times where I'm just like, stop calling me. Why am I the only person of color that you know? Like, but I think it also reminds us that there is a mission that we need to get past some of our own biases for whatever the case may be as alumni. You remind us that we do have a social responsibility to some of what we need to do. And I really appreciate you for reminding me about that, because that is important as we kind of move forward. Yeah. I do have to say, though, Chandra, that you said in the beginning that you tend to be more of the practical, let's say, work. Let's get this done. Mm-hmm. I tend to be the mean lady. I'm not warm and fuzzy, which is funny because of what I do. But kids seem to be attracted to me for some reason. I don't know if I remind them of their mother or what. But so we've talked about relationships. We've talked about mission. How does this all connect to results, outcomes? How do you, Chandra, work with your data, your statisticians, your people that say, that's great that you're doing all this fantastic money spending. Is it coming in? Like, is there a sense of responsibility for budgets or for ideas that need to really kind of bring to fruition the ultimate goal, which is to raise money for X?
So in my role, I'm a little removed from those kind of conversations because I'm not a direct fundraiser. So I am not responsible for raising a set amount of money any given year, which is if somebody wanted to go into this field, that might be a deterrent. There might be some fear around, well, how am I going to be able to raise money? And I'm going to be judged against a number, which is true, but there's also many other metrics that people who are in development are reviewed on, right? Are you going out and actually meeting people? Which is great now that the pandemic is, not completely in the rearview mirror, but we're in such a better place now. People are able to go out and meet in person. Since I am more in the administrative side, nobody is holding me to a number or anything like that. I am supporting the people that are being looked at based on their numbers. So I do have that responsibility to help them, but it's more in the administrative work that I'm doing, getting the gift paperwork done, reaching out to donors and reminding them to complete things like that in a timely manner. So I kind of like that part of my role, that I don't go to bed thinking, oh gosh, how am I going to do this?
I had the same experience in the corporate role I had, where I wasn't responsible for sales and monthly whatever doodads and gadgets that they were expected to deliver in the brokerage business, in the finance field. But I was responsible for making sure that wire transfers were done correctly, that deposits were done in a fashion that was acceptable to all the governing regulatory agencies that belong to check over. So I think, to me, there's more of an authority that we have, right? Because we have all these attention to detail points that we have to be mindful of. But at the same time, we're doing it for those individuals who do need to have these markers and benchmarks done because of the responsibilities that they carry. So I think one of the points I want to highlight here is that to our listeners, that there is a place for you if you don't want to carry the responsibility of a particular role, to feel like what we were talking about, you can't sleep at night because of that. And sometimes you don't even consider a field or a career field because you think it's going to carry a lot of responsibility, especially for those of us who are first generation and don't know maybe roles that are outside of what we see in person, or dare I say on television. For some of us, for others, it's maybe social media. But Molly, what do you think about the idea that you carry responsibility? It's obviously not like you're slacking off, but it's just maybe different than the responsibility of having to come up with a set amount of money.
Yeah. So, and it's interesting because in my current role, I do not have metrics based on fundraising, although I still personally love fundraising and I seek it out to support the mission of the organization I'm involved with. But there is a sense of being a little more free that, well, gosh, I like this work. I'm going to do it for fun. But my regular job, my day job is more about recruiting and training volunteers, those sort of things. So again, I think where somebody in a support role, I think that's the person who likes to see and feel the impact, but maybe not have that negative kind of gut punch like, oh no, what are we going to do if we don't make our goals? I would think in the case of USC, they're probably pretty much always making their goals in terms of fundraising. There's a lot of support there. And I wanted to touch on that because there are very, very large organizations that someone could work in advancement, like Chandra's doing now. And there are little tiny startup grassroots. Think of any of the GoFundMes that sometimes you see pop up. Sometimes those become actual nonprofit organizations. So I think, Sylvia, maybe that's a whole nother topic for a different podcast, but the nonprofit world in general. I think young people have great ideas, and I've seen a lot of, I'm going to make inspirational t-shirts, or I'm going to do these sort of things where somebody might need to learn and benefit from the business side of a larger organization, but then scaling it down to something smaller. So right now, my organization is fairly small, but we're hoping to scale up to something bigger. I was thinking too, Chandra, as you were talking, some of the projects that we worked on together, I certainly could not have done them without your support and the support of the other people, the roles in the office. It's almost like each one plays an equal part, but different.
The pie comes together, like, the picture comes together when you are all doing your part.
Exactly. And so, if somebody's not filling out the gift paperwork correctly, that gift's not going to get deposited. Mm-hmm. It's not going to go into the right bucket, those sort of things. And so I do love the world of advancement because to me, it shows me sort of an ecosystem of where every part balances the other. If one falls down, you definitely see it in the other parts. And Chandra, I know, as you and I had worked together over the last couple of years, there were times where you were doing a role that maybe I should have been doing, but I wasn't physically available to do it because I was in another part of the state. And so I think that's the thing too, is Sylvia, your listeners knowing that sometimes you have one main role, but you also pick up the slack.
Yes.
There might be different changes, and that gives you an opportunity to try on a new role too. And I have come to learn I like the organization, volunteer management. That's kind of my sweet spot.
Right. The roles that we're discussing are not of an individual that this is my lane, this is where I stay, I don't go elsewhere. This is not that kind of responsibility, advancement and development. In my opinion, it's not my world per se, but it doesn't seem like it's the type of world where you say, oh no, this is what I do and I'm here from this time to this time and then I'm out. I'm sure there's people that exist in that environment, but I'm sure you ladies can speak to that. Chandra, I do have a question for you because I do like to ask this of our guests. So now we're going way back, not as way back as with me, but for you when you were younger, what are the skill set that you knew you were going to have? Like in high school, did you do a lot of community service? And were you doing things that kind of built you up to this? I know you shared with us that you were a school counselor.
Yeah.
And that obviously is important to what you do now in terms of your analytical skills and prioritizing and time management, get that part. But when you were younger, for maybe we have some listeners that might be a little younger and thinking about, she sounds like a little bit like me. What can we share about your background in that way?
So I have always loved to help people. I've been a people pleaser my whole life. So I think that has really played into my choice of professions. I really went into school counseling. I originally got my English degree from Colorado State University. And because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my life, which I still am not. I'm still just having fun doing different things. But
yes,
my English degree really, really helped me, I believe, with my degree was in writing and creative writing. And I have used that in every single job that I've had. So writing, I used to write short stories. I also worked a bit for Scholastic, writing an online newsletter for them for several years.
Oh, I love them. Reminds me of my childhood.
Yes, Scholastic Book Fairs, exactly. So I've always been drawn to writing and also helping people. And I found that the helping people, I've always picked jobs based on that. At Redlands, in the schools, I used to work as an office manager for a writer, actually, for Isabel Allende, who's a famous writer. I worked for her.
Oh, wow. Look at you, fancy.
I know. Which was a great position. She also runs a nonprofit that helps women and children all over the world. So I worked inside that nonprofit as well. So I've been drawn since I was young to helping people and writing, and I've used both in my career so far.
That's amazing. And I think that speaks to what we've done in the past as we kind of grew up and grew into our adult responsibilities. We can't forget that it started somewhere. I think in my way, I've also wanted to help individuals and had to kind of struggle through how to do that. As an entrepreneur, it's been challenging because there's so few roles like the ones that I have. And it's so hard to describe and explain and constantly have to be, wow, this is what I do. And feel like still making an impact. And this is one of the ways that you ladies are supporting me to do this. I have one last question, and it just came to me. So ladies, am I getting the understanding that in this world, it's a female-dominated environment? And is that the vibe I'm getting?
Well, in my office, we are 4 women here in San Francisco. But you know what? Now that I think about it, I mean, I don't have any statistics or anything like that, but when we go down to campus we go quarterly, and we have our entire department gets together, and it's I think it'd be about a 60-40 split.
Okay.
60% female, 40% male. What do you think, Molly?
Yeah, I was going to say this about the same. I think, if sometimes we talk about soft skills versus hard skills, and maybe I think, are all 3 of us on the call right now? Did we come about our current roles through an English major?
Yes, ma'am.
And so I think the writing, we've talked about that before, right? Because writing grants and things like that.
Right.
So I think probably more women are in the field of advancement who came in through that way. I'm actually trying to think about the researchers I know, and they happen to all be women right now too. So I don't know if it's maybe related to that. Definitely men in this field also. But it might be interesting, Sylvia, then to do a different podcast about traditional male and female roles in education and where that helps people land.
The jokester in me just wants to say, well, they want us to get the job done. That's why they trust us with it.
That's right.
But I do find that interesting because there are some environments that the presence of a woman is more recognized than others. So ladies, I think that this conversation has been very interesting for me. I hope for my listeners as well. Chandra, thank you so much for being with us. I appreciate your time. Is there anything you want to talk about that maybe USC is doing that you're really excited about in this space that we're talking about?
Well, first, thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Sylvia and Molly. And USC, they are doing so many things. We're about to embark on a big health sciences campaign, which is really exciting. When I was down there a few months ago, I was able to meet with my team, with their head stem cell scientist who's doing all this incredible research. And we're also right on the cutting edge of Alzheimer's research. So
yes.
We are raising money for that. And I do want to give a shout out to the First Generation Student Success Center, because you were talking about first generation. Last time I was at USC, we got to tour the center. They just completed it. It's awesome.
Oh.
It caters to, it's just a safe space for all first gen students. And my office got an incredibly generous donation just to support the student workers in that center, which just came through. So I'm really excited about that.
I just got the chills. Thank you.
Yeah.
First generation student worker here. I would hustle anything. Well, not everything, but you know what I mean? Like I do as much as I could to stay in school.
Right. No, that's incredible. The tenacity that those kids have without seeing it in their own families and going through it without the traditional support of a family that's been in that place themselves. It's just the tenacity these kids have is incredible. And I love that USC is supporting them with their own space.
That's amazing. And I do field trips for school districts. And now that, USC is always on the list of where they want to visit. So that First Generation Center is one spot that I'll go to.
Yeah, for sure. Reach out to them. They'd love to show you guys around.
Excellent. So Molly, another great episode. You are fantastic. You and your friends, my God, we could take over the world. I know I say that all the time, but really we could.
I'm a lucky person to have this many cool colleagues and friends, and it does just make me know that I'm in the right place doing the right thing. I'm lucky.
Yes, and I'm lucky to have you in my life, Molly. I'm super excited that we get to have these conversations and share them outside of just you and I, just saying that, who can we tell this to that they can carry on? But Thank you so much, Molly. I look forward to seeing you next time or talking to you next time. For our audience, stay tuned for more insider career conversations that showcase career paths within advancement and development. We appreciate you listening and look forward to next time.
This podcast is brought to you by Juarez Consulting. Learn more at juarezconsultinginc.com or follow us on social media or YouTube at Juarez Consulting.